And joining me now is Congressman Jim Himes, the top Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee. Congressman, I'd like to say Happy New Year, but it's been anything but a Happy New Year for law enforcement, for the people in New Orleans, for the people in Las Vegas, Nevada. Let me ask you first about New Orleans. From the briefing that you had, you were telling me just off camera that you had a briefing from the FBI today for a number of you. It's not classified, so I can ask you about it. And that they think that this was a lone wolf, that he was inspired by ISIS, that it was not ISIS-directed. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. And we did have an hour-long briefing with the FBI. There were probably, 40 or 50 members of Congress and senators on the briefing. And to date, and it's important to remember that we're, 24 hours or so into this tragic moment. So new information will develop. But in the case of Jabbar in New Orleans, it's clear that he was radicalized. His truck had an ISIS flag on it. He had posted Facebook videos an hour or two before the attack in which he said that he had pledged allegiance to ISIS, and he had a whole series of grievances. Those Facebook videos have now been taken down. But there's very little question that this guy in New Orleans, Jabbar, was radicalized. The Las Vegas case appears different. Right now, there's just no evidence as to what the motive in that particular case would be. So that's more of a challenge.
Are they suspicious about the fact that it was the Trump hotel, that it was an Elon Musk vehicle? Do they think there's some sort of anti-MAGA, anti-Trump motivation?
I try really hard in these situations not to trade in suspicions. I mean,
Okay.
One of the tragic aspects of this event that has taken the lives of more than a dozen people is already political figures from the president-elect on down are using it to confirm their positions. The president-elect is up there saying that this is clearly caused by porous borders. This has nothing to do with porous borders.
They were both U.S. citizens.
They were both U.S. citizens. They were both military personnel. This has nothing to do with open borders. And so I try not to deal in suspicions. But yes, you can imagine, I wouldn't make too much out of it. You could imagine it is plausible that because this took place in front of a Trump hotel, maybe this guy had some sort of beef. But again, right now, particularly for leaders, when people are dead, when families have yet to be informed, this is a pretty good time for leaders, including the president-elect and my colleagues, to be pretty prudent about what sort of information they're amplifying on social media, because this, too, has given rise to just an appalling cloud of misinformation, all of which, by the way, is driven by, in many of my colleagues' cases, their desire to promote their own political beliefs using this tragic killing of innocent people.
Well, I do know that Missouri Senator Josh Hawley is calling for the Homeland Security Secretary, for the CIA director, for the FBI director and others to come and testify, and suggesting that there was some sort of intelligence failure. But from my own experience, I have covered hearing after hearing where all of those leaders have been testifying that there is a serious ISIS inspirational lone wolf threat, that there is an ISIS threat, that there are domestic terror threats, and that it's the highest level they've seen, largely in the last year because of October 7th and the aftermath.
Yeah, and Hawley, I didn't see his statement, but he's not wrong. Anytime there's a tragedy, it's up to those of us who do oversight to determine whether there were failures and to fix those failures. But take it from me, a lone wolf attack, and sadly, that's been the nature of a lot of the lethal attacks on the United States in the last couple of decades, are very, very hard to pick up. 9/11, we remember that, of course. Lots of international communications, many countries, dozens of people involved. That's an intelligence failure. A lone wolf, somebody who's keeping to themselves, maybe not communicating with anybody, who may have skills that they picked up in the military, that's very, very hard to pick up. And by the way, in both of these cases, these were U.S. citizens inside the U.S. They are protected by our Constitution. I mean, if one of these guys had, and this didn't happen, but if one of these guys had stood on a street corner and shouted pro-ISIS propaganda, that is constitutionally protected speech. It may be appalling, but it's constitutionally protected. So this kind of radicalized American citizen action is really hard to detect.
I know we have no idea of motive in terms of Nevada, whereas in New Orleans, he left behind a will, he left behind statements, social media statements had the ISIS flag. In New Orleans, there has been confusion as to whether the identification of the man who rented the Cybertruck is the same person as the man who died in the explosion. What do you know from your briefing?
Well, according to the FBI this morning, and I guess they have a little bit more work to do, but what they told us, and again, I'm not telling you anything classified because, of course, we learned this on the phone, is that the FBI had interviewed the family of the suspect, and that they were provided with photographs of tattoos that this individual had that apparently were also on the body that was found inside the Cybertruck. Now, I'm not a forensic guy, so I can't tell you that that's dispositive. This is
not evidence, but
this looks like the individual who died is also the individual they suspect of perpetrating this crime.
And from the family, do they have anything about motive?
You know, as of this morning, the FBI had nothing. Again, as you pointed out, the New Orleans killer, it was very clear what they were doing. But this individual in Las Vegas, I think they as yet have nothing.
And finally, do you think that it's too soon to be doing the Sugar Bowl, or do you think that New Orleans can be safe for 80,000 people plus other tourists and residents?
You know, in the spirit, again, of, being prudent and thoughtful, I'm not a domestic security expert, so I can't answer that question. What I can tell you is, and this is a really important conversation to have, we could tighten things up. We talked a little bit about the constitutional protection of people posting on Facebook. As it appears, Jabbar did immediately prior to his attack. And people are going to say, well, why didn't Facebook alert the FBI? And that's a fair question. And there's probably at least two answers to that question. One, there's a technical question. Does Facebook monitor all of the hundreds of millions of posts that get put up every hour or so? But there's also a legal question. Do we want the government knowing every time you post as an American citizen with constitutional rights an angry screed? And that's a complicated discussion. You know, a threat to commit a violent act is different than I'm really angry at the current president. But again, when we're talking about a homegrown extremist, we're struggling with issues that we don't struggle with terrorists that are in Yemen or Pakistan or wherever they may be, and that's constitutional rights.
Congressman, thank you so much.